For my capstone project, I decided to focus on Buddhism, one of the world's largest religions. Specifically, the form of Buddhism I was able to study is Theravada Buddhism. Theravada is a form of Buddhist schooling that teaches the original practices taught by the Buddha. I interviewed an individual named Sainam. Sainam is a Buddhist college student from Thailand. In Thailand, Theravada Buddhism is practiced through about 95% of the country, and Thailand holds the second largest Buddhism population in the world. Buddhism was established by a man known as Siddhartha Gautama. Allegedly, Gautama was born as a prince in Nepal and became a Kshatriya warrior. Through being skilled at archery, Gautama won the most beautiful woman in the world and had a child with her. His father spent his life trying to please Siddhartha, and he hid him from the real world. But one day, he is finally exposed to it. There is a quote from the Indian Buddhism lecture by Dr. Powell. It says, "Upon seeing the four passing sights, as they say, the old man, the dead man, the sick man, and a monk." So after Siddhartha seen these four passing sights, he decided to leave the beautiful woman who was now his wife, and the child they shared together, and embark on a journey of what we would call self-discovery. He did this through living life as a monk, or a life of asceticism, which is a severe form of self-discipline and abstinence from life pleasures. Eventually, Siddhartha Gautama was close to death when he was saved from a young woman and decided to give up on his ascetic life to recover. After being judged by his disciples for giving up on the lifestyle, he then decided to spend the next few weeks meditating under the Bodhi tree, or the tree of awakening. On the last day of this extensive meditation, he reached nirvana, or what we call the ultimate state of enlightenment. The quote from the Indian Buddhism lecture from Dr. Powell, he says, "I am awake, and this here is the central focus of all that we call Buddhism." And nirvana is an idea that an individual's desires and suffering will go away. So Siddhartha Gautama battles a psychological battle within himself to get rid of desire and temptation. And that is the whole purpose of nirvana. In the tradition, they call these temptations the three daughters of death, known as discontent, delight, and craving. Getting rid of these desires usually requires you to access your subconscious mind, and so we can see a connection to Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory, where he states that emotional turmoil is caused by undesirable feelings that live in the subconscious mind. Sigmund was able to learn to unlock the unconscious mind and get rid of these negative emotions. In the Religions of Earth e-text, it states that Freud then discovered that unconscious feelings, which at first seemed accessible only under the hypnosis, would be remembered by a patient if his physician listened sympathetically and asked the right questions. So this connects to the Buddha's idea of nirvana, because he probably had to ask questions within himself, within his mind, on what was causing the desires that he was having. So after Siddhartha Gautama awakened, he gains psychic abilities such as clairaudience, astral projection, clairvoyance, superpowers, and so much more. So from there, Siddhartha became what we now call the Buddha, or the Awakened One. He developed the philosophy that we all have our own reality within the world based on how we see it. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts, and with our thoughts we make the world. This is a quote from the Indian Buddhism lecture. This is the foundation of Buddhism. The Buddha then goes on to develop the Noble Aryan Path, which consists of the right view, right intentions, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right concentration, and right mindfulness. Following these practices is said what's supposed to help lead one to nirvana. He then goes on to develop the Four Noble Truths. Suffering is universal. The origin of suffering is attachment. The cessation of suffering is attainable. And the path to the cessation of suffering is detachment. These act as guidelines for the life of a Buddhist. Siddhartha Gautama shared these messages with those he met, and that was then the birth of Buddhism. Although it wasn't a major religion like it is today, it was only told to a couple people before he died, and they traveled and spread this message, and things changed, almost like a game of telephone. So that's why there's different forms of Buddhism, there's different schools of Buddhism. Not everything is exactly how Siddhartha told it. Well, to begin the interview with Sainam, I first asked him to tell me a little bit about his background in Buddhism.
Yes. So, well, if talk about my background about Buddhist, yes, nowadays I haven't been to like temples that much. Maybe because I just think that it waste my time, and I just found nothing to do there. But when I was young, and I stay with my grandmother, and she always took me to the temples all the time to make merit. Yeah, because Thai people believe that making merit is a good way to kind of like collect the budget, like money, for the future life or the next life, something like that. So making marriage at a temple is one way, that the people can do something like that. So that's why I need to go with her all the time.
Next, I asked Sainam to tell me more about what he did at the temple with his grandmother.
To temple, to like maybe donate some money to the monks and also worship the Buddha image, something like that. And also it's going to be about we are going to do some ceremony at the temple in the kind of like religious days, for example like one Khao Phansa or one Auk Phansa. These are the religious days for the Buddhists to go to temples, and maybe they oh no and they will walk around the temples. It's called like Yuan Tian, something like that. Yeah.
I then wanted to hear about the perspectives within Buddhism, so I asked Sainam to tell me about the equality between men and women and if women are treated differently.
So I think being a monk in the past, is kind of like you have more opportunity. I mean, men have more opportunity to educate themselves. I mean, for they have more opportunity for education, and also they have more opportunity in the society more than women. Women kind of like were oppressed a lot at that time, because women are considered just as like housekeepers or housewife, something like that, or minority, in the society in Thailand. And also, I think this kind of idea, is kind of like affect not just in the past but also nowadays. Some old people, especially for old men, they kind of like focus on the authority. They kind of like focus on power. They think that they kind of like they are more powerful than others. Yeah, something like that. So it's kind of a vertical society, something like that. Mm.
I then had the same question regarding LGBTQ members and what their experience was like at the temple.
Yes. So gay or LGBTQ people, when they go to temples, they were like gossiped. They were like, I just overheard one time when I went to the temple, and I heard that, some old women, they kind of like chit chat or talk about, the and LGBTQ people, a person who go to the temple as well, and they kind of like like maybe complain or talk about the behaviors or the way he dressed, something like that. Because when uh Thai people go to temple, or whoever go to temple in Thailand, they are supposed to wear appropriately. For women, they need to dress kind of like long skirts, something like that, just not to show your skins that much, something like that. But people, I mean that person kind of like gay, when he went to temple, he kind of just wear what he wanted to wear, something like that. And that's kind of like it's breaks the rules of Thai belief, something like that. So that's why he was gossiped, something like that.
Then in the first interview, we discussed how the younger generations are kind of moving away from Buddhism a little bit, and it's not as popular for them as it is with older generations. And Sainam kind of explained the reasoning for that.
Old parents, old people in Thailand, they're kind of like, especially for men, as I just mentioned, they kind of like think that they have power and they kind of like can control over people, something like that. And when we need to go with them or do something with them, I mean teenagers, when we need to do something with old people, they kind of like need us to do whatever they would like us to do, and we need to do it right away. And it's kind of like if we do not do something that they ask us to do, it's kind of rude or something like that. Yeah.
Okay. We next discussed issues that occurred in Buddhism and within the Buddhist temple, and I found a lot of this information very surprising just because it's something I never would have thought of.
There are many news, that in Thailand about the inappropriate behaviors from the monks. Sometimes the monks, when they receive the money from the donation, sometimes some monks, I mean some monks, they just use that money, in order to fulfill their satisfaction, maybe in their own personal stuff. For example, they use that to buy iPhone. Okay, that's kind of ridiculous. Yeah, that buy iPhone as I can say, or go to travel somewhere, or yeah, and that's funny, because it's kind of like when you are a monk, one thing that you should realize that you need to cut all the things around yourself that's stimulate your feelings, something like that. But some monks, just use those money, to fulfill their satisfaction for their own personal reason. And also for the sexual harassment, which kind of like is the serious topic, among I mean in Thailand between women and monks, because sometimes when some women go to like temple, they were sexually harassed by monks. I think it because some monks, some monks are kind of like, oh, but actually as far as I know, from the news, some monks are old, who I mean the monks who are old usually like sexually harass women. I don't know why, but maybe, oh, I don't know. I don't know the reason. Okay. But I just think that it's kind of like it show the inappropriate behaviors, from the monks to people, something like that.
Last, I asked Sainam to tell me more about some practices within Buddhism and things that they worshipped other than the Buddha image.
All right. Yes. It's kind of like Thai people, when they see something weird or strange, from normal, they kind of like, for example, like total, when that total kind of like bigger than others, or it looks, weird from others. Maybe it's because of some gene or some DNA of itself. But the villagers or Thai people will think that that turtle is like uh from the, what is this called, imaginative world, or it's kind of like holy thing, holy animal, that came in the world and gives them wealth, the wealth or the luck, something like that, and they will worship that animal that they consider that is holy. And also, something that's ridiculous is that they just use the powder to put on the total and find the lucky numbers, yeah, for the lottery. Yeah, because Thai people like lottery, like, spending money on lottery a lot. Yeah, because they believe that one day, they will be billionaire or millionaire by, spending money on like, yeah, buying lottery, something like that. So that's why it's kind of like there are many beliefs, that from animals, from things, yeah, that one group of, people think that it's holy and you need to worship it, something like that.
So that concludes my interview with Sainam in my capstone project. I found the information he gave me very interesting, especially because it was an actual inside perspective rather than just a textbook explanation of Buddhism. And the things I heard were very surprising. I really enjoyed doing